Some old video of Trump was dug up by Right Wing Watch, and he has some curious thoughts here that are out of lockstep with Republicans on the issue of debt.
What are some of the first steps, the message that you begin to send forth to empower yourself and to begin that transition?
Well, first of all, you mentioned the word debt, and nobody knows more about debt than I do, because I owed billions and billions of dollars. But I'm a professional. I mean, I know what I'm doing, and it worked out very well. I negotiated a couple of deals with banks and this and that, but I had a lot of friends who went bankrupt. You'll never hear from them again. I never did that in the early 90s when I was in trouble. I owed billions and billions of dollars. And in a certain way, I love debt, because in good times, there's nothing better than debt. In bad times, it comes back to bite you. So we talk about debt, we talk about the assets and the liabilities of debt, and generally speaking, it's a liability, especially if you're not a really skilled professional.
Wow. If any other Republican candidate had made those comments on debt, they would be donezo. They would have no shot, because you just vocalized a position that is flat out blasphemy in a Republican primary. I mean, one of the things the Republican Party, they've always had the rhetoric on debt, and conservatives have always said about debt, like, no, that's the last thing we want ever. And they always attack the Democrats as the party that, you know, is horrible, and they increase the debt, and the Republicans are better. And Trump himself now goes back and forth and says, like, oh, yeah, too much debt in the country. Got to blame the Democrats. Debt. It's so bad, it's so bad. Now, historically, that's actually not true. The Democrats have been significantly better with the debt and the deficit than Republicans have. Republicans have been worse as they talk a better game on debt, and they say, we care about it the most. Well, your actions show that you're worse. But look at what he said. He said, in a certain way, I love debt. Again, imagine any other Republican said, I love debt. They would be done. They're out of the Republican primary. They would get 0 votes. He also, in classic Trump fashion, just lied there and said, I never did any of that, talking about bankruptcies. That, oh, I have friends who went into bankruptcies. You'll never hear from them ever again. I never did any of that. Dude, he did that with 4 of his companies. 4 of them. Now, at the time, he didn't do it with 4 yet. He probably did it with 1 or 2 of them at the time. But he's still a liar. Like, you still did it. And you're certainly not against it in principle. You did it multiple times. So he's just shameless. And when he says the stuff that he says. And then I have even more devastating admissions from him here. So he also said, and this is recently, that was an old clip. This is recently here. He said, I'm the king of debt. So not only does Donald Trump love debt, he's also the king of debt. More. I've borrowed knowing that you can pay back with discounts, and I've done very well with debt. Now, of course, I was swashbuckling, and it did well for me, and it was good for me and all that. And, you know, debt was sort of always interesting to me. Now, we are in a different situation with a country, but I would borrow knowing that if the economy crashed, you could make a deal. What? Donald Trump would like to treat the country in a similar way to how he treated his businesses, where he over-leveraged them, he took on too much debt, he filed for bankruptcy, fucked over all the workers, and then he took the money and ran out the back door. Dude, he's telling you, yeah, I would do something similar. I'd make a deal. That's what he's talking about. That's the kind of deal he's talking about. He's saying that with the country. Hey, if the economy crashed, first of all, what? A person who wants to be president, if it crashes, what do you mean if? You're supposed to prevent the crash. That's why you're in there. Well, no, if it crashes, I'll make some sort of deal. Well, the deals you made for your companies were horrific for the people in the company. It would be no different for a country. And then you ready for this? Again, the cherry on top here, which shows how silly Donald Trump is. According to the Tax Policy Center, nonpartisan, quote, Donald Trump's proposal, his tax proposal, would add $11.2 trillion to the national debt by 2026. So yet again, the party, and in this case, the person who, oh yeah, we hate debt, you know, we're great with it, we'll limit it. It turns out, no, he said he, quote, loves debt. He's, quote, the king of debt, and his proposal would add $11.2 trillion to the national debt by 2026. What happened, big guy? Every single thing that Republicans and conservatives have said all along on this issue, the orthodoxy that has been just rushing through their veins all along. now a charismatic guy comes along who's an authoritarian who says, yeah, flip that on its head. I love debt. I'm the king of debt. My tax plan adds $11.2 trillion to the debt, but you're going to vote for me anyway. What do? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm going to vote for you anyway. Even though you just voiced opinions that I could not disagree with more, and one of my main issues is debt. I want to limit the debt, limit it. Fiscal responsibility. You come along and say, I'm wildly fiscally irresponsible because it's a cult of personality and because you're an authoritarian, I'm going to bow down to you. And I don't give a fuck that you yourself said you, quote, love debt. You are, quote, the king of debt. And your tax plan adds $11.2 trillion to the national debt. They are such immense hypocrites, it's hard to even wrap your mind around it.